Hello and welcome. Tonight, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawalle under investigation for alleged diversion of 70 billion naira from state treasury. Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, All Progressives Congress and the President-elect Bola Tinubu all oppose request by PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar for live coverage of proceedings at the presidential election court. Plus, just how much infrastructure has the Buhari administration executed in the last 8 years, and at what cost? Well, that's our focus as we continue our review of the administration.
On business news tonight, African Development Bank approves $15 million to support infrastructure financing in the country.
On sports news tonight, 22-time Grand Slam champion Rafa Nadal withdraws from the French Open after failing to regain full fitness from a hip injury suffered in January.
From Abuja, police in Anambra State arrest 2 suspects over the attack on staff of a U.S. embassy following raids on suspected hideouts of the criminals.
National news from London. Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, has been attacked from the air by Russia for the 9th time this month.
With barely 10 days to the end of the current administration, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, is accusing the governor of Zamfara State, Mr. Bello Mohammed Matawalle, of allegedly diverting 70 billion naira meant for contracts in the state. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the EFCC spokesperson, Osita Nwaja, however, says the commission is presently handicapped by the constitutional immunity conferred on Governor Matawalle and other governors who are also under investigation. Mr. Nwaja explains that the recent statement by Governor Matawalle asking the anti-graft agency to investigate ministers and presidential aides is aimed at diverting attention from his activities as governor of Zamfara State.
The Commission would like to put the nation on notice to expect more of the kind of wild allegations made by Mr. Matawalle, as those at the receiving end of EFCC's investigation are fighting back viciously. But the real issue with Matawalle is that he is being investigated by the EFCC over allegations of monumental corruption, award of phantom contracts, and diversion of over 70 billion naira. That is the issue. 70 billion naira investigation. That is the issue. Now I'll give you a little insight into what we have found so far. The money which was sourced as loan from an old generation bank, purportedly for the execution of projects across the local governments of the state, was allegedly diverted by the governor through proxies and contractors who received payments for contracts that were never executed. Is a loan. The Commission's investigation so far revealed that more than 100 companies have received payments from the fund with no evidence of service rendered to the state.
Proceedings resumed at the Presidential Election Tribunal today with the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the All Progressives Congress all opposing the request of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, for the live coverage of his petition challenging the declaration of Mr. Tinubu as winner of the presidential election. And their separate objections, they insist that the solemn nature of the court will be put in jeopardy if granted, and the courtroom is for serious business and not a stadium or circus ground. Our correspondent Emanuela Ekele reports.
The team of lawyers for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and lawyers to the APC, the President-elect Bola Tinubu, and the Independent National Electoral Commission are back in court for the continuation of hearing of the petition by Atiku Abubakar challenging the victory of Bola Tinubu of the presidential election. This time, the court is billed to hear the application by Atiku, requesting that the proceedings of the court be televised. The justices arrive and settle into the day's business. In his argument, counsel to Atiku and the PDP, Chris Uche, prayed for an order of the court allowing the televising of proceedings given the importance, seriousness and national significance of the case. That prayer was opposed by the counsel to INEC, Abubakar Mahmood. He says bringing cameras into the courtroom would defeat the solemn atmosphere that the court is known for. He submits that the request for live coverage is unnecessary and uncalled for and should not be granted. In his argument, counsel to Tinubu, Wole Olanipekun, said he found Atiku's request as not only surprising but dangerous and capable of prejudicing the court. He further told the court that Atiku should not be allowed to turn the court into a football stadium or a circus ground where all manners of telecasts are permitted. He further warned that if the request is granted, it could expose judicial officers to avoidable dangers and demanded that a heavy cost be imposed on Atiku for making the request. Counsel for the APC, Lateef Fagbemi, was of the same view with the counsels to Tinubu and INEC. He faulted the request, adding that the facility and policy documents are not there for the application to be granted. After listening to other parties, Justice Haruna Samani reserved ruling. We caught up with the counsel to the PDP outside the courtroom.
Well, we are happy that our motion for televising of the proceedings has been taken today and ruling has been reserved. So that's a major accomplishment for today. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, the court heard the petition of the Allied People's Movement. The respondents asked the court to either strike out some paragraphs or dismiss the petition. The justices subsequently adjourned to May 22 for further pre-hearing. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, an Abuja High Court presided over by Justice Ian Gekwo has fixed May the 24th, 2023 for ruling on the suit filed by 5 residents of the Federal Capital Territory seeking to stop the inauguration of Senator Bola Tinubu as the next president of Nigeria. At the resumed hearing of the suit, Justice Ekwo adjourned the matter after counsel to the plaintiffs, Mr. Chuks Nwachukwu, addressed the court on the issue of locus standi, jurisdiction, and whether the matter is not already before the Presidential Election Petition Court. Well, as part of efforts to ensure a hitch-free transition process, the coalition of northern groups are calling on security agencies to take proactive steps against persons planning to truncate the presidential inauguration. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, a spokesperson of the group, Mr. Abdelaziz Suleiman, says there is the need for security agencies to checkmate the activities of persons trying to create some level of uncertainty about the inauguration. The group also appeals to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to ensure that all public office holders in the outgoing administration are prevented from sneaking out of the country before May the 29th.
It is in view of this and other potential national threats and likely impediments to the smooth take-off of the incoming administration that the CNG declares the following definite positions. On plot against handover, 1. We have resolved to strongly repudiate in all ramifications any attempt by any individual or group to bring about any situation that could lead to scuttling or in any way postponing the scheduled handover of leadership to the new duly elected federal administration of Bola Tinubu and state governors on May 29. 2. To demand from the DSS urgent proactive action to checkmate the maneuvers of the perpetrators of the evil scheme, and most importantly, to trace and expose the extent of the plot, arrest and prosecute not only the executors of the plot, but its sponsors and all individuals or groups in any way linked to it. To demand that anybody or group found remotely involved with the financing, direct execution, or concealing information on this sinister and diabolic scheme be treated appropriately as a treasonable felon and enemy of the state and fellow citizens.
And still ahead of the new administration, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, says he is throwing his weight behind Honorable Tajuddin Abbas for the Speaker of the 10th House of Representatives to build on legislative gains of the 9th National Assembly. Honorable Gbajabiamila, who was addressing members-elect from a faction known as the Joint Task Team in Abuja, says Honorable Tajuddin possesses the capacity to lead the 10th House and is asking members-elect to trust him.
Some members-elect of the House of Representatives. The meetings, which have been largely to endorse the candidacy of Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, also involves members-elect from the other political parties. Speaker of the House and the APC's choice for Senate President Godswill Akpabio were also in attendance. The Speaker goes down memory lane to make a case for party loyalty.
I've been the pioneer, the leader of what they called the House Project at one time, when Tambuwal was the Speaker and when we installed Tambuwal. I regret it. 2015, Tambuwal, the Speaker then, had a preference, Dogara. Dogara was a floor member. I was the most senior APC member in that house. In 2019, Dogara himself had a preference in Bagu. I stand before you here as a testament of what party loyalty and consistency can do in your life.
He explains why he is supporting Honorable Tajuddin Abbas for Speaker of the 10th House.
That I decided to support the person that is least closest to me of everybody that is running. Because I saw in him a man with tremendous capacity. I want you to trust me. I want you to trust my judgment. I said to the people who zoned, why Northwest? And they said to me, go and read your political history. That from the day Nigeria was born, the Northwest being the largest voting bloc with 7 states, has never, ever been outside the top 4 hierarchy in Nigeria. And the merger of APCs between the Southwest and the Northwest.
The candidate of the APC for leadership of the 10th National Assembly had this to say.
The first G is God Almighty. The second G is what? The God. And the third one is what? The government. May you conduct your affairs mindful of the admonition of my late mother by respecting the 3 Gs, particularly respect the government.
I have never sat down with Mr. Speaker for 1 second since the day I went to introduce myself to him, that he has ever sat me down to say, look, I am going to support you under so-so and so-so condition.
The dust is still not settled, as other members-elect of the APC, who had indicated interest to become Speaker of the 10th House of Representatives, still hold on tightly to their ambitions, despite the clear position of the party. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, in continuation of our review of various sectors under the Buhari administration in the last 8 years, we beam our searchlight on infrastructure tonight. We have that in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawalle is under investigation for alleged diversion of 70 billion naira from state treasury. Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, All Progressives Congress, APC and President-elect Bola Tinubu all oppose the request by PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar for live coverage of proceedings at the Presidential Election Court. And at least 13 persons are dead after over 20 rivers burst their banks in Italy, forcing thousands from their homes. And if there's any area President Muhammadu Buhari holds dear in his 8-year administration, that area is infrastructure development. These efforts have also come under close scrutiny, especially with growing concerns over Nigeria's debt profile. The current administration is leaving landmark infrastructural projects, some completed, others still in progress. And this is amid questions whether the funding is commensurate to the quality of infrastructure that is being carried out. In continuation of our review of different sectors under the Buhari administration, our correspondent Dario Dewu examines the highs and lows of infrastructural drive of the Buhari administration.
Road, rail, airports, digital communication assets, and improved infrastructure in these sectors will no doubt boost commerce and unlock new economic doors for a nation, perhaps the crux of President Muhammadu Buhari infrastructural drive. The administration had embarked on an ambitious infrastructural drive right from the beginning, although the president recently admitted that it's been a bumpy ride. A closer look at some of the sectors reveals the level of work done so far and the enormous task ahead. The 8-year journey of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration is drawing to a close, and that's in a matter of days. One chapter that everyone in this government loves to talk about in the entire book of this administration is the infrastructure drive of the president. They say there's a big picture. In 25 years, state capitals will be linked by rail. How sustainable and at what cost? The Chinese company is building the rail, and the loan Nigeria has taken from the Asian country is in the tune of $4.29 billion. That's according to the Debt Management Office. Some of the projects that are covered by the loaning include the Nigerian Railway Modernization Project, Idu to Kaduna section, Abuja Light Rail Project, Nigerian Airport Terminals Expansion Project in Abuja, Kano, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. Nigerian Railway Modernization Project, Lagos to Ibadan section. Like other corridors, the Lagos to Ibadan rail is fully operational, and it appears it is creating the desired impact. Lawal Lanre Idu and Rotimi Martins use the train frequently.
President Buhari's administration scored very high, in my own estimation, very high on infrastructure, especially on this railway thing. I can say this because I was born in Epitapeta, and growing up, we used to go play in Epitapeta Junction, the railway compound, and train wasn't a new thing to me. I traveled on train a lot, so bringing it back several years now to this level, I think something that's very commendable.
We are a moving train in Nigeria, and I must say the train is moving. We can't compare ourselves with the other part of the world, but I must tell you this is a very good development if we can just handle it properly. When you start, other people, other governments will follow. And I can assure you that I believe, by God's grace, that the next government will put in better structure than the structure that he's put in place. He's played his path, and that's my belief.
The Minister of Works announcing Babatunde Fashola, who's been on the 8-year journey with the president, justifies the work done and the funding.
How we utilize income, what we choose to do with it, and some of the things is to invest them in visible assets. The same is true of the sukuk, is borrowing. So all across the country, you will see the sukuk sign showing what is being done with money that was borrowed. So when people are talking of borrowing, which is a legitimate concern, but you are only seeing one side of the balance sheet. The other side of the balance sheet is the assets. So Kaduna Kano finished, 200 and something kilometers. Kaduna Abuja under construction, 165 kilometers. Second Niger Bridge finished. Lagos Ibadan, 127 kilometers in 2 sections, 44 kilometers Lagos to Shagamu, 40 kilometers completed, 4 kilometers yet to go. From 44 kilometers to 127, we are to kilometer 115.
Nigeria's housing deficit was at 20 million units in 2019, and according to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, The housing deficit stands at 28 million units as at January 2023. The ministry says it has got 46 sites from the states for the development of more than 6,000 housing units.
Railway infrastructure is the bedrock of socio-economic development, and I'm sure that the next administration will build upon what this government has done.
As the Buhari administration gets ready to pass the baton to the next, the expectations are high, with hopes that the incoming administration would continue with more reliable infrastructure to connect supply chains and people to higher quality of life and opportunities. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
We'll have more on the highs and lows of infrastructural development of this administration during the course of the bulletin. We're staying with projects. The River State Governor Nyesom Wike has commissioned 2 road projects to begin activities leading to the inauguration of a new governor in the state. The events are part of a week-long activities formally announced by the Inauguration Publicity Committee. Governor Wike says at the event that he will be retiring as a governor with a sense of pride and fulfillment.
River State.
The commissioning of Akpabu Odido Road connecting Emoha and Nahoada West local government areas is one of the 2 events earmarked on the first day of a week-long activity for the inauguration of a new governor in River State.
Area of approximately 43,800 square meters.
The governor-elect Sim Fabara and his deputy, Professor Ngozi Odu, are led with other political leaders to the venue by the serving governor, Nyesom Wike, who is to perform the ceremony.
God should continue to make you grow. And what you have done here in River State, Nigerians are yearning to see you replicate that in the whole country.
The area has had no access road since its existence until 5 months ago, when this project was flagged off for construction, an achievement the state government has commended.
Your Excellency, I will not begin to recount the importance of this road. This is Odido community, a community that was hitherto an archipelago, meaning that if there was no other way to access this road other than through Obukege, where they need to walk, they need to use canoe to cross to get to primary school and what have you. Your Excellency, you did not just promise us this road, you are here today to flag it off. And we are eternally grateful to you for that.
Your Excellency, this we are grateful to you. And we believe, and our prayer is that you have served River State well. You have set a pace that no man has set. We thank you and we thank all that worked with you. And we pray that God will continue to strengthen you and lead you back home safely.
For Governor Nyesom Wike, the completion of this project is yet another feather in his cap as he prepares to leave office with a sense of pride.
With this road now, people can come in here. It's no longer taken from the other side. I thank God Almighty. Again, promise made, promise fulfilled. And let me also to thank you very well, because in the last election, you all came out and supported us. In the governorship election, National Assembly election, and the presidential election of where we told you to support. You supported us very well. And I thank God that we have also fulfilled the promise we made to you, that if you support us very well, this road will not be an abandoned property, our abandoned project. Today, we are here to commission it.
Earlier, Governor Wike led guests to inaugurate the Rumasara internal roads in the Ohio Akwa local government area, where he cautions contractors of ongoing projects to keep to the terms of the agreement despite his number of days in office.
Let's now head to Abuja for more stories. Hi, Linda, it's over to you.
Hello, Millicent. We begin with security stories. The Commissioner of Police in Anambra State, Mr. Echeng, says 2 persons have been arrested in connection with the attack on the convoy of the United States Embassy staff. The police chief says this was carried out during a joint security operation comprising police tactical teams from the State Command and troops of the Nigerian Army and Navy on suspected hideouts camp at Ugwanocha community. The CP also explains that the team was on a mission to assess the impact of erosion in Obaro local government area in a convoy of 2 vehicles when they were attacked.
I am here this afternoon to give you a brief on the ambush of a United States consulate convoy on 16th of May 2023 in Obaro local government of Anambra State. Information from United States Aid Authority disclosed that 5 of their staff and 4 policemen were involved in the attack. Joint security forces comprising the police, the Nigerian Army, the Navy, and DSS raided a camp in Ugwanyocha community of Obaro local government, which was suspected to be the hideout of the assailants, but discovered on getting there that the camp had been totally deserted. However, 2 persons of interest were arrested and are already assisting the police in investigation. The police command and other security agencies are working round the clock in concert with the government of Anambra State to find and rescue the missing official. In this regard, I call on members of the public who can provide information about the identities and location of the culprit to kindly assist the police with such information timely.
The Nigerian Army says at least 70 terrorists have been killed by troops of the Nigerian military in the last 2 weeks. The Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Damadami, disclosed this while briefing journalists on the operations of the military in the last 2 weeks. He says 511 more terrorists were also arrested during the same period. Major General Damadami says several weapons, including explosive devices, AK-47 and pump-action guns have been recovered. Meanwhile, the military also confirmed that it has rescued 2 more Chibok schoolgirls.
Troops of Operation Hadinkai in the northeast zone of the country have sustained the offensive against terrorists and other criminal elements within the zone through intensive ground and air operations, which yielded tremendous results. Between 3rd and 12th May 2023, troops conducted offensive and terrorist operations at terrorist enclaves, camps at different locations in Sambisa and villages within Bama. Equally, on 6th May 2023, troops on fighting patrol rescued 1 Saratu Daudas, one of the adopted Chibok girls on Syria 10 of the list. Troops equally neutralized 26 Boko Haram and Islamic State of West African Province terrorists, arrested 25 terrorist logistics supplier, 1 terrorist spy, and 1 Boko Haram terrorist. Troops also rescued 1 kidnapped Chibok girl, while a total of 511 Boko Haram and Islamic State of West African Province terrorists and members of their family, comprising of 99 adult male, 161 adult female, and 251 children surrendered to troops at different locations within the theater of operation.
Away from security stories, President Muhammadu Buhari has admonished members of the National Youth Service Corps not to be used by centrifugal forces to undermine the country religiously, economically, or politically. The president gave the advice when he hosted the Presidential NYSC Honors Awards ceremony at the State House in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the scheme. President Buhari further directed the head of the civil service of the Federation to ensure immediate employment to 65 former Corps members into the federal civil service. Our State House correspondent Gloria Umezoke reports.
The President's Honours Award ceremony for the 2019 set would be President Muhammadu Buhari's last engagement with Corps members as a president. The award ceremony in commemoration of the 50th year of the National Youth Service Corps has carried on uninterrupted since 2005. Some members of cabinet are in attendance as 52 recipients are earmarked to receive the awards.
The youth of Nigeria await eagerly your accent to the NYSC Trust Fund. The trust fund will guarantee a better future for the scheme and for the mass of our youth.
3 outstanding core members from Benue, Anambra and Kogi states who topped the winners list for the 2019 and 2020 are then conferred with the President's Honours Award. 13 ex-corps members who are living with disabilities from the injuries sustained during service are also recognized under the NYSC Hope Alive program. It is a moment of gratification for the President as he advises the corps members.
My dear patriotic youth, it is worthwhile to counsel that you do not yield to centrifugal forces acting either covertly or overtly to undermine the country structurally, politically, and economically. In this connection, I hereby direct the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, the Federal Civil Service Commission, and the Honorable Minister of Education to ensure A, the employment of the Presidential Honours Award recipients, as well as the physically challenged, a cash award of 250,000 naira to each of the best award winners and 200,000 naira each to the other award winners.
Aside commending the high sense of probity and discipline demonstrated within the NYSC, the President is categorical about his desire to see greater viable contributions through more entrepreneurial excellence going forward. From the Presidential Villa, Gloria Umezuki, Channels Television News. Meanwhile, President Buhari will on Thursday, May 25th, confer national honors on President-elect Bola Tinubu and his Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, made the disclosure while unveiling the program of events for the presidential inauguration. Mr. Mustafa, who doubles as the chairman of the Presidential Transition Council, explains that while Senator Tinubu will be conferred with the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic, GCFR, his vice, Senator Shettima, will be conferred with the Grand Commander of the Order of Niger, GCON.
On 25th of March, which is a Thursday, 2023, investiture of the President-elect and the Vice President-elect with national honors of Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, GCFR, which would be bestowed on His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and GCON, which is Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, which would also be bestowed on His Excellency Kashim Shettima, Vice President-elect. In addition to that, on the same day, the handover of transition documents will be undertaken. The Electoral Act in itself, as a matter of fact, envisages that a litigant can be between the tribunal and the appellate court 240 days, 180 for the determination of the petition, and 60 for the determination of the appeal. So our laws are very sacrosanct. They have placed these things in the public domain. That will proceed with the inauguration of President-elect Asuwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu on the 29th. In spite of the litigations going on, the courts will take their time and deal with those matters.
The federal government has constituted the Advertising Offences Tribunal to adjudicate on any violation of the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria Act. The Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, inaugurated the tribunal in Abuja. The tribunal is an independent, specialized judicial body established to ensure equality, openness, fairness, and impartiality in all disputes and offenses relating to advertising practice in Nigeria. The five-man panel is led by retired Justice Cecilia Olatoregun. That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Linda. Well, let's get back to one of our top stories. More insight into President Buhari's infrastructural drive in the last 8 years. And joining us on the news at 10 is Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma, the Director, Center for Economic Policy Analysis and Research at the University of Lagos. He's also a fellow of the Nigerian Economic Society. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Professor, can you start by giving us your assessment of President Muhammadu Buhari's infrastructure drive?
Infrastructure is very critical for the economy. In economics, we call it social overhead capital, very, very critical. And in Africa and in many countries across the world, there's this deficit of infrastructure because it drives economic growth. And for the current administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, we can see that that is one of his strong points. And we can see some major strides taken in the area of rail development, roads, airports, and the much talked about second Niger Bridge. However, there are so many issues concerning these developments because a good number of them were started by the previous administration, and we need to look at them in context and to make sure that we're able to tie down the developments we are seeing with the huge amount of loans that have been incurred or procured to make sure that these to drive these developments. So it is not totally something we can say this government has done on their own. The previous government of President Goodluck Jonathan did a lot. For example, the airports that we can see, which we have the results currently, were started by the Goodluck Jonathan administration, and then with the counterpart funding paid and all that. So basically, the residual, actually what we can now say, entered into the public debt. And if you take a look at the amount of money this country has borrowed in the past 8 years, it's actually humongous. The bulk of the borrowing did not go into infrastructure. The bulk of the borrowing went into consumption, particularly through the channel of fuel subsidy. Because we can see for the past 8 years budgets periods, we can see a lot of budget deficits. Deficit financing had been the hallmark of the administration. And each of much of that deficit actually can be traced to the fuel subsidies. However, we must give them credit for being able to make some inroads in this area of developing infrastructure. If we have time, we can discuss a little bit more about them, but it is something that we need to commend Buhari, President Buhari, for making these giant strides.
Professor, infrastructure deficit continues to also produce socioeconomic challenges. There is a report by the World Bank that says the quality of infrastructure in Nigeria is low. The gap is estimated to reach $3 trillion over the next 30 years. How do you think Nigeria can stem this tide and close the gap?
Yes, I think the issue of quality control is very, very important. Because by the time you take a look at the costs of our infrastructure, whether you talk about roads or even rails, and you compare them with other African countries, you discover that there's a very big gap. And then the issue of getting value for money is also a challenge, generally. because the quality of supervision, the quality of monitoring, the quality of evaluation, the quality of approvals, actually these are areas that actually are suspect in many regards. That you discover that it has been like a recurring decimal. Every government will come in and build roads. Within a few years, those roads actually become very, very bad. It's a very big problem. And then value. If you look at comparative costs across other countries, in Kenya, in Zambia, in Ethiopia, and you look at the length, the mileage or the distance in being able to procure this infrastructure, they are not comparable in many respects. So in terms of value, and in terms of quality, this is a very, very big area we need to actually address. Else we'll just be people with siphoning money away, and the ordinary man does actually benefit from all these huge expenditures.
Finally, Prof, I mean, there's been huge investment. You mentioned road. There's also transport, infrastructure. What are the key infrastructure areas do you see perhaps, or would you advise the incoming administration to focus on? And this is, that would have meaningful impact on the people.
Yes, and I think one area I would not so commend the Buhari administration is the area of balanced development. Their development has been skewed. For example, you have a rail project. You have the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, standard gauge. And you have the Port Harcourt Maiduguri that goes through Enugu to be narrow gauge. And it's actually not operational in terms of being able to commence the work in that particular axis. Because when you begin to develop certain parts of the country to the detriment of other parts, the people migrate, and it creates other problems for the country as a whole. I think the incoming government should focus on balanced development, spread development across the country, open up the ports in the eastern part of the country so that goods actually, we can now decongest Lagos. Because when you begin to invest a lot more in one part of the country, normally people will come for economic opportunities. They will migrate. You have the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. It is standard gauge. The Port Harcourt, Aba, Enugu is left abandoned. Then you have the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is being worked on seriously. Then you have the Port Harcourt, Enugu. It's actually in a very bad situation. So we need to pursue balanced development.
All right.
So it will mitigate the volume of migration from one part of the country to the other, and it will be able to enhance economic development.
Fellow of the Nigerian Economic Society, Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma, thank you for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we continue in Lagos at the courts. Chief Magistrate's Court sitting at the Sabo area of Yaba has ordered the remand of Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti for another 4 days in police custody over alleged assault on a police officer. Chief Magistrate Adeola Olatubosun ordered his continued detention sequel to a motion ex parte brought by the police seeking for an order of the court to further keep the defendant at the State Criminal Investigation Department, SCID Yaba, Lagos, to enable them carry out further investigation. The team of prosecution counsel, led by DCP, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Simon Lowe, told the court that the motion ex parte was supported by a 12-paragraph affidavit with one exhibit attached to it. DCP Lowe also told the court that the motion and a written address in support was deposed to by one ACP Saheed Kassim, one of the investigating police officer attached to the State Criminal Investigation Department. The learned Sikh said that it is his humble submission that from the facts, nature and circumstance, the applicant is entitled to the relief sought. Responding to the prosecution team, Mr. Femi Akiyemi, who held the brief for Seun Kuti's counsel, asked the court to stand the matter down. But the Chief Magistrate refused the request of the counsel for a stand down and granted the request for extension of the remand order. She ordered that the defendant be further kept in police custody for 4 days. She also said that a duplicate file of the case be sent to the state's Director of Public Prosecution for his advice. And to some company news now. Momo, a subsidiary of MTN, in commemoration of its one-year anniversary, has reiterated its commitment to bridge and drive the financial inclusion gap in Nigeria and the African continent. The company made the revelation during an event here in Lagos organized to mark the 1 year of the Momo Payment Service Bank.
It's the one-year anniversary of Momo, a payment service bank with easy-to-open and operate features. The platform allows Nigerians and indeed the continent to initiate fund transfers, pay bills and remittances. And this gathering of key players cuts across the banking, digital, tech, telecommunications, financial landscape, among others, with the aim of fostering collaboration in the sector.
We are gathered here to have this discussion.
The CEO of Momo Payment Service Bank, Mr. Elihini, alongside the chairman, Michael Ajuku, speak on the journey of Momo 1 year after, as well as disturbing data on access to financial inclusion and the unbanked.
If you take 3 Nigerians, 2 of them male have bank accounts, only 1 female. So there's a lot of work also for us to do in that area. What I want all of us to live here with is that sense of working together, that sense of collaborating our efforts for growth and development of this financial service ecosystem.
A large swath of the population still remains unbanked, still remains unconnected to the formal financial system. So I have great hopes under the leadership of Eli, our CEO, a truly tested hand in this business, that the successes of M-Pesa, which I'm sure most of us know, will easily, under his leadership, be replicated in Nigeria.
The event, put together by Momo Payment Service Bank, also featured an interactive session with panelists drawn from the financial, digital and banking sectors.
Private can never truly replace the effect of social intervention. Nigeria is 200 million people and counting, or give or take, and that means that your effort can only go so far. We have to work collaboratively.
And with the cutting of the Momo 1-year anniversary cake, there is a resolution and determination from the Payment Service Bank to further reach the unbanked in the continent, as well as grow its over 4 million users across the world.
Now time for business news. Here's Anne Waldo.
Thank you, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. The African Development Bank, the AFDB, has approved a $15 million loan to Infrastructure Credit Guarantee Company Limited, InfraCredit, to support infrastructure financing in Nigeria. The loan is coming at a time when InfraCredit is seeking to raise capital to finance an additional $375 million in infrastructure over the next few years, primarily as leveraging private sector financing. And that financing will enable InfraCredit to leverage domestic capital markets and bolster access to long-term local currency infrastructure financing in Nigeria. The Bank of Industry has maintained an appreciable growth in its financial performance for the year 2022, despite the unstable global business environment. The chairman of the bank, Mr. Aliyu Diko, made this disclosure at the bank's 63rd annual general meeting in Abuja.
Nigeria's oldest and largest development finance institution, the Bank of Industry, is holding this 63rd annual general meeting amidst the impact of the global economic challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian-Ukraine war. Shareholders and the management team of the bank are looking at the books to assess the performance of the bank in 2022.
Total assets of the group grew by 39.2% between 2021 and 2022, from 1.71 trillion to 2.38 trillion, respectively. This growth was largely due to the 3 successful capital raising transactions worth 1.8 billion euro in the year. The group also reported a growth of 11.7% in its total equity between 2021 and 2022.
Despite all of these economic challenges, the bank increases credit to the Nigerian's private sector.
Credit to Nigeria's private sector increased by 19.7%, or 6.88 trillion, to 41.8 trillion from 34.92 trillion in 2020 and 2021, respectively.
As Nigeria joins the rest of the world on the road to full economic recovery, the Managing Director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Olukayode Biton, speaks on how the bank's operations will still favor the Nigerian micro, small and medium enterprises, despite the country's accelerated annual inflation rate of almost 22%.
Most of the loans that we give out, the rates are anywhere between 9 and 10%. So actually, this is a time for, the small and medium-sized companies to actually, come and take more loans from BOI. Because when you have the monetary policy rates at over 18% and you are getting funds from us at about 10%, it means the funds from BOI are subsidized.
The management of the bank remains confident of an improved outlook in 2023, while promising to deliver on its mandate to strengthen the micro, small and medium enterprises.
And let's find out how the domestic market fared today. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report, where it looks like the bull is taking a break today as profit-taking dominates proceedings at the local bourse. Yeah, see the bear now shining today. All share index 0.90%, almost hedging towards 1%, 52,109 points. CFA 52,000 holds by tomorrow. Market cap 28.37 trillion naira. Let's look at the activity chart. We see it's all red there, showing not much activity in the market compared to yesterday. 334 million units of stocks valued at 5.14 billion naira. We see deals losing that 6,000 level. Let's look at the sectoral performance. That's also red right there across counters we track. We see the banking there after shining for a couple of days, down 0.44%, thanks to the duo of Zenith Bank there losing the share price, taking that counter down. We see the consumer goods counter down 0.02%, thanks to Honeywell Flour and Dangote Sugar losing your share price there, bringing those counters down. So we see the market mover today as the big one of the suits there. Stocks worth over 1 trillion, most capitalized right there. Airtel Africa shedding about 6% today, closing at 1,175 naira per share there. That's why the market is down today. As negative market breadth, 27 decliners against 22 gainers as investors switch to profit taking. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you, Anne.
And that's Business News. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Anne. Now to Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, has been attacked from the air by Russia for the 9th time this month. Kyiv's authorities said it seemed all incoming missiles had been destroyed, but smoke was seen over the capital after debris caused some damage in 2 districts. Officials say 1 person had been killed and 2 more wounded. The wreckage of cruise missiles falling in amongst residential areas. Ukraine's Air Force said overall 29 out of 30 missiles launched overnight were shot down. Meanwhile, striking drone footage shows residential buildings hit with intense artillery fire in Bakhmut, a devastated city at the center of fighting in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine's military said it had made new territorial gains in heavy fighting around the city, despite being outgunned and outnumbered by Russian forces. In the past week, Kyiv has said it has stepped up pressure on Moscow's troops to the north and south of Bakhmut. Russian mercenary forces say they have moved forward inside the city, where Kyiv has acknowledged they have made small advances. Rail traffic has been suspended between the capital of the Crimean Peninsula and the city of Sevastopol after a freight train carrying grain derailed. Crimean Railways said in a statement that the derailment was caused by interference by outsiders. Wagons loaded with grain had derailed and no one was injured. Earlier, the Baza Telegram channel, which has links to Russian security services, had reported an explosion on a railway line in the region, which was annexed by Russia in 2014. Leaders of the G7 nations are meeting in Japan, where they will discuss a proposal for a Ukraine peace summit during their three-day meeting in Hiroshima. United States President Joe Biden told his Japanese counterpart, Fumio Kishida, that the US and Japan will hold Russia accountable for its invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak said he would talk to the EU about concerns over car manufacture following warnings of an existential threat posed by a looming Brexit trade deal deadline. It's after automaker Stellantis, which owns Vauxhall, Peugeot, Citroën and Fiat, warned British car factories will be forced to close if the government does not renegotiate its Brexit deal immediately.
We are engaged in a dialogue with the EU about how we might address those concerns. When it comes to auto manufacturing more generally, I'm going to be meeting the CEO of Nissan later today. As you'll know, they've invested £1 billion in the northeast for electric vehicle manufacturing. Other Japanese leaders I'm meeting today, total investment of £18 billion.
Airstrikes have pounded parts of the Sudanese capital Khartoum as further fighting erupted near a military camp in the south of the city. The army has used air power and heavy artillery to try to drive back the paramilitary rapid support forces from residential areas of Khartoum and its adjoining cities of Bari and Omdurman. The Sudanese Doctors Syndicate accused the RSF of attacking 3 ambulances and arresting their drivers and a doctor in Khartoum. The union said it has documented attacks on 20 hospitals. A New York City cab driver who drove the Duke and Duchess of Sussex for about 10 minutes as they tried to shake off photographers has said the couple were clearly nervous during the short journey.
3 people hop out of a black car right into my cab, and it was Prince Harry and Meghan, and there was another woman with them as well.
Sukhchern Singh, who goes by the name of Sonny, says he picked them up at a local police precinct in Midtown Manhattan. Harry and Meghan's spokesperson said the couple endured a relentless pursuit that lasted for more than 2 hours after they left the Miss Foundation for Women, where Meghan was honoured for her work.
All of a sudden, paparazzis came out of nowhere and just started flashing, taking pictures, and and they didn't stop until the security got out and said, move, move, move. And then the garbage truck got out of the way, and the paparazzi were following the car. And Prince Harry and his wife and the other lady, they were nervous and they looked scared.
And President Gianni Infantino has promised that the 2026 World Cup will be beyond the imagination during a ceremony to launch the branding for the tournament in Los Angeles.
In the Hollywood Hills, Los Angeles, your hosts tonight.
The United States, Canada and Mexico will play host to 48 teams, the first time so many countries have been involved in the competition. For the first time, an image of the trophy and the tournament hosting year is depicted in the tournament logo. Infantino was joined on stage for the branding reveal by Brazil's Ronaldo, who won the World Cup in 2002. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel studios in Lagos.
And thanks, Simon. Spanish superstar Rafa Nadal has withdrawn from the French Open because his hip injury has not healed. Nadal will not play in the season's second major for the first time since his tournament debut in 2005. And Daniel Medvedev has broken new ground at the Rome Masters when he cruised past German qualifier Yannick Hanfmann 6-2, 6-2 to reach the semi-finals for the first time. Medvedev had never won a match in the Italian capital before now, but has produced some of his best tennis to advance to the last 4 at an ATP Masters 1000 clay court event. And that's sports news.
And the main news again, the EFCC today announced that the Zamfara governor, Bello Matawalle, is under investigation for alleged diversion of 70 billion naira from the state treasury. The EFCC spokesperson who gave the indication in Abuja, however, said the commission is presently handicapped because of constitutional immunity for governors. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.